Welcome back to another episode of That Sound Podcast, and if you love music, you are in the right place. Today we have a guest, Bobo Coen, a music enthusiast with, as you can see, an absolutely massive vinyl collection. Obviously knows his stuff. But today we are going to be chatting about Slane Castle. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, what we loved, what we didn't love, what we missed, what we maybe should have missed. But Bobo, thanks very much for coming on.
And thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I seen some of your videos on Facebook, and you're flying, going through your vinyl collection, and I says, we'll have to get a chat with this man. He knows what he's had.
Thanks so much.
Yeah,
it's fun trying to think of new ways to talk about. I know you say it's huge, but I still think it's quite. Well, I guess it is quite big. I don't know how I'm feeling.
Yeah, no, it is like, and people like ourselves, Bobo, like. We all love music, and there's nothing better than to just chat about music.
Yeah, I agreed.
You know what I mean? It can turn you in to a good mood from a bad mood. You know what I mean? Or a bad mood to a good mood, I should say. It has that power, and there's nothing better than just sitting there and having a crack where somebody might like X, Y, and Z, and you like, whatever, and then you can have your conversation. It's like sport. It's like music. It's all part of the whole thing, I think. Anyway, it's great to just chat. And go with the flow.
I would agree with that. I think I've probably become more tolerant of other people's taste. When you're in your teens or your 20s, you tend to be very militant. How can you listen to that such and such rubbish, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But the great thing about particularly rock music is there's something for everyone. If you want heavy, it's there. If you want something a bit more poppy, it's there. And everything in between is valid.
100%. I don't know about yourself, just on that topic. I found... I'm in my late 30s now, but even like albums that I would have, we'll say, maybe that older figure in your life would have said, check this album out, and you would have thought, it's rubbish, like when I was younger. And as you mature and get older, as you just said, you're like, actually, you know what, I didn't get it. I wasn't ready for that album yet. I wasn't just, didn't piece it.
Yeah, I would say a perfect example of that for me is Jethro Tull. Okay. If you said to a 17-year-old me, Jethro Tull, I would have a bunch of old hippies.
Yes.
But I would say they're, at this stage now, I'm going to be 55 in September.
Okay.
They're absolutely one of my favourite bands.
Right.
And I just adore their stuff from the 70s.
Yeah.
And if you'd said that to me 20 years ago or even 10 years ago, I would have laughed at you.
Yeah, that's funny because actually, as I was writing to you earlier, I was on the couch and I was chilling out and I was listening to a record, and I picked up a John Mayall. It was the newer stuff. Was it the 3-piece stuff? What was the name of that album? There was no electric guitar or no drums. It was just 4 guys. It was recorded in the Fillmore East in New York. And like that, it was kind of jazzy and bluesy, but more jazzy to me than bluesy. But to me as well, if someone gave me that album 20 years ago, I would have turned it off in 20 seconds.
Yeah.
But now I can appreciate the talent and how they just construct these songs and tell a story, and how it can just drift, the jazz can drift and the blues comes back, and it's just, it comes with maturity. I think certain music comes with maturity.
Yeah, I think your palette expands as well. If you're a real music fan, you're always looking for new ways. I mean, for instance, Black Sabbath, what we'll be talking about later on, I'm a fanatic, but if all I listen to Black Sabbath, you're narrowing yourself to a very small field there.
Yeah. Like, I'm sure, as you can see, I'm a big Metallica fan, but like that, I have the craziest taste in music. Like, I would listen to pop, rap, dance, jazz, classic rock, classical rock, orchestra. I listen to everything. But if you ask me what's my favorite, I'd probably say classic rock or hard rock. And then even when it goes into metal, I can listen to like hardcore metal, and then I can listen to pop. Like, people are like, what's wrong with you?
I just think it's an appreciation for, we'll say, rock, and that's a very wide.
Yes.
I mean, even if we look at heavy metal, that's a real umbrella term. It covers a lot of different genres. The appreciation of this, how long it takes to get to that level of musicianship.
Yeah.
Just like, I would say, talking about Metallica, James Hetfield is probably one of the greatest rhythm guitarists of all time.
Probably, yeah.
And Scott Ian would be another example I'd use from Anthrax.
Yeah.
If you give me a guitar now and I had the rest of my life free, I'd never get to that level of musicianship.
Yeah, or songwriting.
Yeah,
You know, some of the stuff, you know, as we discussed on our podcast, like we're only going about a year, and like the more you learn and you're talking to these musicians, and we've talked to some really, we talked to all types of musicians, but we've talked to some big names we say that have, sold millions of copies and blah blah blah. But it's funny that a lot of people seem to have the same path, where it's it doesn't always begin in good beginnings in life. You know what I mean? It seems to
yeah.
always have a hiccup somewhere, and that's where this spark of creativity comes from. You know, it kind of comes from something. Not always, not always. I'm not saying it's all kind of bad, or broken homes, or losing a parent or whatever, but it seems to spark, or that drive to push to be better. I don't know what it is.
If you've got nothing to lose, you've got everything to gain.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
Dave Grohl, I remember seeing an interview and he said, Nirvana went in the garage and we were rubbish. And 6 months later, we were better. And 6 months later, we were better. As just a bunch of like-minded people getting in a room together and figuring out if they got something to say musically.
yeah, yeah.
And we're very lucky that, so many great bands have come from that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And funny, just when you say about like a short time, I was reading the liner notes in that John Mayall one, and I don't want to say it wrong, but I don't have it with me here. But the four guys that met up, they were only in a room together for 3 weeks, never jammed together, never spoke together, but come out with this album. It's really good. I definitely, I'll drop a link into it. I can't think of the name of
Oh,
it now,
great.
but it's
Yeah, I'm always up for recommendations.
yeah. One of the songs was California, and I think it's a well-known one. Really cool, very jazzy, but different, different. But right, we're here to chat about Slane. So, Bobo, what is your first memories of Slane?
My first memory of Slane is one I couldn't go to, which was Queen, because I was too young and my mother wouldn't let me go. And loads of my classmates went and I was sick.
Yeah,
But I think actually I didn't really go for a long time after that. I might be getting the years wrong. I
yeah,
think the first one I was at was Guns N' Roses,
92,
91,
81,
92.
yeah, I think it was 92.
Yeah. And what I remember about that day was it was one of the most beautiful summer days I've ever seen in Ireland.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, from the second we got on the bus, it was just a crack, everyone drinking, having a laugh.
yeah,
And as you probably know, it's famous now. Guns N' Roses delayed coming on for hours.
yes.
And because the weather is good and you've got Irish people, that's not a good combination. By the time they came on, I remember I was so drunk I didn't care. I was just having the fun, and it was a great day. Fate no more were excellent.
Yeah, great band.
I think there was an Irish band, My Little Funhouse, opened.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure the drummer from that band went on to play in Therapy for a short while anyway.
okay.
But yeah, it was a really great day, and it was. But the Curse of Slane hit because it's difficult to get out of Slane when it's dark.
It is, it is, it is. A lot of people will say that to me, and okay, I live about 20 mile, 20 mile, 25 mile from Slane. So I know the area fairly well. And everyone says that to me too about Slane is a nightmare. And I get that. It is. It's 80,000 people in a small village, one road in. Well, I suppose it's kind of on a cross. But there's not a lot of roads, it can only go one way, and there's cars abandoned everywhere and buses. But I have to say, I've been chatting to some people, and I know Ireland has changed a lot since the 80s and stuff. I was chatting to people who was at Thin Lizzy, the first one, and what do you call them? The Rolling Stones in 82, 83. And they were saying that obviously Tin Lizzy, I think, was only about 15,000 people at that one. But the Stones, I believe, was 70,000. But if you know your way around, is what I'm trying to say. I remember the last one I was at was Metallica, and I was back home in my bed at 11:30, 11:45.
Yeah, see, but Metallica, I was very clever. My friend, I was living in England. My friend bought tickets for his 50th birthday,
Right.
and he said we're camping. I said no, we're not.
Yeah, no.
So I rang a friend of mine who actually lives in Slane Village, and we went down the night before.
Right.
So when everyone was getting on the buses, we were sitting outside the pub having pints, waving them off.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it was the smartest thing I ever did because the night before was almost more crack
I
than
was
the
in the
gig
village
itself.
myself, funny enough. I was in the pub.
Yeah,
I was in the village pub the night before. Yeah, it was great.
yeah. There was a little cover band playing.
That's right. Yeah, we were probably in the same pub.
Yeah, well, I remember a little. I mean, I'm just 6 foot. There was a little guy. I'd say he was 5'2". Jumped up and hit the bottom of my point, and I went all over me. And I just
Okay.
started laughing because it was just like, whatever. But yeah, I remember that night being a great night, and the gig was. It was a really good lineup, I thought, for Metallica. I think support bands in Slane is a key to people having a great day.
Yeah, yeah. Going back a few years now, as you mentioned, Guns N' Roses. My first one was the Chili Peppers. I think you were there too.
Yeah, that was great. I was mainly there to see Queens of the Stone Age,
Yeah, me
but
too, actually.
I thought the day was phenomenal.
And talk about weather. That day was
Yeah, that was
roasting.
another day that was beautiful.
Rolling Stones was roasting. Tin Lizzy was roasting. I think Bob Dylan wasn't too bad as well. There's been a lot of bad ones, but there's been a lot of
The
good
year
ones.
I went to the Rolling Stones was dreadful.
The later one, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and
Foo
I
Fighters were
think
desperate as
it
well.
rained all day and trying to get out because it's in a natural amphitheater. It
Yes.
was like trying to walk up a skating rink.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it can be a nightmare. But that day for the Chili Peppers, as you said, Queens of the Stone Age, Foo Fighters, I think the Blizzards played as well, I think. Did they play
I,
that year?
PJ Harvey was opening. I didn't see her.
No.
Feeder. I
Fido.
got there for Queens of the Stone Age, Foo Fighters, and the Chili Peppers.
I
The,
actually watched the Chili Peppers last night on my dodgy box. Um, but
but the thing sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I was just like I wasn't a massive Chili Peppers fan. Like I knew the hits and I knew, I just probably didn't appreciate. They did fade out. They got a bit overrated, I think, at the end. For me personally, I think the first couple of albums were good, and then they went too poppy and that for me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean,
But they
what
put
I
on some show.
yeah, what I remember that day and what struck me was it's the only band I've ever seen where the lead singer is the least important member of the band. The jamming between Flea and John Frusciante
Yeah,
and
it was brilliant.
yeah, it was just great.
And even Chad on the drums, like it was almost
Yeah,
like a three piece, and the lead singer was kind of just there. He won a
yeah, Andy
competition.
Kiedis was just bouncing around looking where can I sing in here.
Yeah,
And it's the only band I've ever seen where the focus is not on the lead singer.
funny you say that. Going off topic here, and I went to see Blink 182 in Kilmainham last year, and I'd have to say now I know it's a different kind of a band, we'll say a pop punk band or whatever, but the drummer, what do you call him?
Travis something or other, isn't
Yeah,
it?
he's the main man.
Yeah,
He's the main man. Like I said to my buddy who I do the podcast with, Luke, who is the drummer, I'm like, it's the Travis show, and the two boys are just here. Like like he is a
yeah.
phenomenal drummer. He's so damn good. But
Well, I used to be a drummer years ago.
okay,
I was okay, but so I'll always look at the drummer. But I always think of Buddy Rich, the great jazz drummer, saying a great band with an average drummer is average, but an average band with a great drummer can be great.
yeah, that's true.
And it's they drive them. I mean, obviously, I'm just looking at your Metallica thing there. Lars gets a lot of
Yeah,
slagging, but
yeah,
he's the
yeah,
right man for the job. And
yeah. He brought more than
I
drums
always
to
think he's more of
Metallica.
a manager than a musician.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he brought more than drums to Metallica. He was the brains of the operation. The way he produced the songs and structured the songs, and riff A with riff B and riff C and timing and
Yeah, I
repeating
think,
this, the riff with Enter Sandman, the famous thing that he said, no, the original song he changed. He's like, no, do that part three times and then do that bit at the end. Like, he has more than just drums. He's a very clever man.
and if you look at Metallica as a whole, I mean, they were my gateway band. I still love them. I thought 72 Seasons was a killer album. But if you look at them as a whole, all those other heavy bands, particularly American bands, and I don't care what anyone says there, they do not have a career without Metallica breaking that wall. When Metallica played The Monsters of Rock, which is now download, for the first time they were stuck between Rat and Bon Jovi,
Jesus.
and you know, so the Anthraxes, the Slayers, the Lamb of Gods, the Slipknots, all of those bands, Metallica created that touring circuit for them, and
100%.
that's a fact. So people can slag them over, oh, they're not as good since Cliff and all that baloney.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
just elitist crap as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that's like pub chat, I think. Yeah, like,
Yeah,
smoking room chat. Like Metallica, I'd safely say, Bobo, like, there's going to be no one to repeat what Metallica have done. There's
oh
no
no,
one going to play for 40 odd years. There's not.
no, I don't think the music industry
No, would let even.
is set up that way anymore. I don't think you get a Nirvana or a Metallica because, like, again, going back to Black Sabbath, up to Metallica, bands were allowed to develop and develop and develop. Like, Kill 'Em All is a world of difference from Ride the Lightning.
Yeah,
And if a band doesn't come out now and sell X amount of copies, they're gone.
yeah.
That's it.
That's the sad part. Yeah, yeah,
But on the plus side, I would say, as a music fan, and it's given us as fans the opportunity to hear great music because people aren't thinking about selling records; they're thinking about doing what they want to do.
yeah, yeah,
So you get a real eclectic spread again across the whole of rock music or any other genre, I would say,
yeah.
where people can just do whatever they want.
Yeah, and like even like when you're looking at mainstream stuff as well, like even in our own wee country here, like there is a savage amount of homegrown talent that I've really learned about in the last year. Be that grunge, be that hardcore metal, be that thrash metal. There's some absolutely killer bands at the minute. Like off the top of my head, there's a band called Words That Born, from Dundalk, not too far away from me. Gamma Bomb, a thrash metal band from Newry. I don't know if you ever heard of them. Another grunge band, Ritual Effect, absolutely brilliant. Then there's bands like Worn Out and Hero and Aura, The Scratch. Like there's really, really good bands in Ireland, and I'm
It's a
sure.
scratch there. They've got a good slot supporting Iggy Pop, I think, in the summer.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they're only. I had them on actually, and they are only back from a tour with the Dropkick Murphys.
That's great.
They,
And it's great to see bands doing that. The band that I really like from Ireland, they have two albums out there called Parthenon.
okay. Oh
And I would
yes,
say they're from Cork. I
yes,
think they're a heavy sludge band.
yes.
If I were to say to someone just one word, I would say they're like Yob. So it's that really heaviness. But
Yeah.
I actually seen them at a charity gig, and they were like somewhere down the bill, and I just thought these guys have it. They just went for it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, some great, and even like the Siege of Limerick is coming up now this weekend, and some killer bands on it too. And it's great to see too. Whereas where a lot of guys I talk to be like, you don't need to look at the mainstream stuff. Like, look at your own stuff first and support that. And like, as I got into it and listening more and finding out these new bands, and you mentioned Cork, but like, there's a serious scene in Cork at the minute.
Yeah,
Serious. There's a lad that we had on called Evan Prendergast, who's in on Cultivate and Worn Out, I think it is. I hope I'm saying that right. And he's also set up his own promotion company, and he's promoting a real metal scene down in Cork at the minute. And he's even bringing bands now from England, and they're coming to Cork now. Like the scene
that's fantastic.
is
Yeah,
thriving.
I just as long as bands can manage their expectations,
Oh yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
then we're in for great music. If someone is joining the band thinking and they're gonna have a swimming pool in a mansion, I
yeah, yeah.
think those days are probably gone.
And I think they know it. You know that the more and
Yeah,
more I talk to them, like even the scratch there, like the guys, I had a great crack with Carl McKenna. It was a great episode there, from the scratch. We did it probably last year. It was one of our first ones. And this is the third time that they went with the Dropkick Murphys and supporting them. And they done some of their own shows in America. They're just back from Australia. As you said, they're doing Iggy Pop, supporting Iggy Pop. But the Cottle would tell you himself, like, it's hard.
yeah,
It's you know, y- you think that money's falling from the sky. Like, funny, I just jumping bloody topics here, but I just finished Ozzy Osbourne's book.
Yeah, I
And
Am Ozzy. That's a great book.
great book. I listened on audio, and like as he says in the book, they had fuck all money after the first two albums. They didn't have a whole lot. You know, they were going from concert to concert. Whereas as a fan, you were probably looking like, oh, they broke America and they're touring, oh, they're living it up. But they were really living week to week, like.
Yeah, I think the managers in the 70s tended to
Yeah.
rip people off big
Ah,
time.
still today, from what I hear.
Yeah.
Still
Like,
today.
I mean, the biggest band in the world ever, the Beatles.
Mm,
Paul McCartney only owns 17% of the royalties.
yeah.
And you just think,
It's wrong.
okay, we're at the opposite end now where there's no money.
Yeah.
But I think as long as bands manage your expectations and then they're in it for the right reasons,
Yeah. It would
you
that,
get to tour and you get to see different countries and you get
yeah.
to put out a few albums,
Yeah.
and then that can never be taken away from you. You're
Yeah.
part of something you love.
Yeah, 100%. Like that's what I was getting at. Like Carl would say, like I'm great. I can, like you just said, I can go to Australia and play music. I can go to America. I can see different parts of the world, and I'm happy with that. Like, but is it a long term job that I can be, you know, you know, you know, have a family and pay for a house and do this? Probably not.
Uh, I would always use the example of, say, someone like Mudhoney, who were massive during grunge.
Mm-hmm.
They all have day jobs. Like Mark Arm, the lead singer of Mudhoney, he is the warehouse manager of Sub Pop Records. So if you buy a record from Sub Pop, he probably packed it for you.
It's mad.
And then they use their vacation time to tour. I think their bass player is like works on ambulances and stuff like that. You know,
Yeah, it's mad.
paramedic. Sorry, the
Yeah.
word went out my head
Oh, I
there.
know.
So it is possible as long as you can find a balance. I think between managing real work and managing music. Not saying that music isn't real work; it's a lot of work.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Just not paying dividends at the minute. I don't,
yeah,
you know. But
it's just finding that balance in there. And if you can live with that, that's great. Some people can't. I
yeah,
mean, even with big bands, we look at like Exodus, you
yeah,
would think are meant to. You know, the only one with money there is Gary Holt because of his stint with Slayer.
yeah.
But
Okay.
their lead singer just left because he couldn't tour anymore in the back of a van, which is fair enough after 45 years or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah. I've had them conversations with bands as well, and they're like, when you're on the road for never mind 40 years, like 40 days, and you're stuck in a van. He was saying to me, like, there's only so much you can talk about without getting in a row. He's like, there's days that I stared out the window for 8 hours just to not aggravate each other. Like, it's tough. Like,
Yeah, and so I mean, that's where, but from a fan's point of view, again, it's the thing. I think musically, we're living in a golden age because people are doing the music they want to do. There's no one saying, I don't hear a single here.
yeah,
And, you know, even when I see news sites, oh, they released a new single. Well, you mean you've released a streaming track of it? There isn't actually physical singles
no,
in
no.
general released anymore.
There's no going to HMV lining up and waiting for your album to come out or your
Yeah,
single. Like, it's sad too, like, you know, but at least we have our vinyl, Bobo, I suppose. You know what I mean?
yeah. I mean, I know people might say I'm a snob, but I still think it sounds better in vinyl than anything. But I also think it's the ritualistic thing. If you take the album out, you
Yeah,
have to put it on.
yes.
You know, CD, you can just throw it in the back seat of the car and off you go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a bit of care and love, and
Yeah,
you said the liner notes or the pictures or the booklets or the poster or whatever's in the
yeah.
vinyl, you know. But yeah, back to Slane then. So yeah, I think, well, that was my first experience of Slane was that Chili's. I thought that was phenomenal. Now I was 17, I think, 16, 17. I'm trying to think of other ones that I went to then.
I went to Neil Young.
Okay, how was that?
Uh, well, I because I'm a big Booker T and the MGs fan, and they were his backing band on this particular tour cycle. It was Van Morrison, Pearl Jam's first time in Ireland, I think.
That's
I
right.
think 10 had just come out,
Yeah, yeah,
and I can't remember who else was on it, but definitely I remember Pearl Jam were absolutely stunning that day.
yeah.
They just came out and they went for it,
Dave
you
Appreciation
know.
was on the drums that day, I think.
Uh, yeah, and was on drums? I can't remember really. But
For Pearl Jam.
yeah, it was great. And Van Morrison came on. He was okay. You know, a fan, if he's in the mood, he can be
Yeah.
great. If he's not in the mood,
Depends what
Neil Young was
you get to.
fantastic. It was a lovely day. It was just really nice. But I just remember a lot of people going, you know, in the mainstream press, who the hell is Neil Young?
Yeah.
You know, we don't. I personally thought it was probably too big a venue for him.
Right. Even
You
at
know,
that, yeah.
I'd probably, it was called the Point Depot at the time, probably would have been better for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was another lovely day. The weather was great. There was a nice atmosphere. I don't know if I'm being correct here, but my memory of it wasn't as overly packed as
Right.
I've seen Slane. Like the biggest crowd I ever remember seeing at it was the Chili Peppers. You couldn't swing a cat at that gig.
Yeah, that was jammed. That was jammed.
And I remember the Chili Peppers saying that was the biggest audience they'd ever played up to that point. It was 80,000 there.
And the rest probably that jumped hedges and everything.
The last one I was at was the Metallica one.
Yeah.
The weather wasn't great, but I mean,
No.
it was really decent support bands.
Yeah.
I know Ghost is Marmalade for a lot of, or Marmite for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed them. I thought they were good.
Yeah. Maybe I'm still on that snobby end of it that I haven't given them enough time to get. I just don't know. And I was right. I got so close that day. I had gold circle tickets that day, and I was
Wow,
right.
that's great.
Yeah, like I was literally 5 foot from
I
like
think
the mic. But
my overriding memory that is, I looked at James Hetfield on the big screen because I was in the next section. I just went, oh man, he's relapsed. I knew.
I said the exact same thing. I grabbed my friend Luke, who I do the podcast with, and I remember they were finishing up, and we had our backs to the stage because I left just to get up to the top of the hill to get home for 11:30. That's how I got home at 11:30. But like Enter Sandman, I'm like, okay, I can deal without not hearing that again. But I remember looking back and I grabbed them. I said, take a good look there. I said, they're done. I said, he's fucked. He's not. And he's like, no, he's not. I'm like, look at him, man. He's all puffy and just looks.
Yeah, he was very blotchy.
I said, he's back on booze, big time. And he was like having none of it because he is a diehard. You think I'm bad? He's crazy. But yeah, and then that was the end of it, wasn't it? He went back into.
Yeah. The guy that was living in Slane that we stayed in his house, Glenn, his main obsession that day was Kirk Hammett was playing the Greenie guitar, which belonged to Gary Moore and then belonged to Peter Green before that.
That's right.
And he was just like, he was in the next section, just get me some photographs of the guitar. So most of the pictures I took that day were of the guitar for him. I was like, there you go.
He doesn't go anywhere without it.
Yeah. It's a brilliant guitar. It sounds great.
Yeah. And now, a word from our sponsors.
We are absolutely delighted to announce that we have All Kings Competitions on board as a sponsor for Season 3 of That Sound podcast.
All Kings are Ireland's original and best online competition website.
From Ferraris to houses to cash to luxury holidays and everything in between, All Kings have got you covered at great prices, great value. They can't be beat.
Check out All Kings on all social media platforms.
Thank you.
I mean, he's another person that gets a lot of slating, oh, wow, this, that, and the other. But that's his sound.
Yeah.
And
look at his solos in the early days, though.
Yeah, I wouldn't be really one. Like, I'm not a major Megadeth fan. It's his vocals really to put me off. But when I was younger, I was a Metallica fanatic and all this. Oh, Metallica are no good without Dave Mustaine. You weren't even alive when Dave Mustaine was in the band.
Yeah, as I say, that's like
you know,
smoking room chat. You know what I mean? It's
and look, Megadeth, whether I like them or not, have gone on to have a great career.
Yeah, and
the guy's a multi-millionaire. Just get over it. It was 1 year in his life, 40 years ago.
Yeah, and probably they were all probably as bad as each other, and there's probably just more to it. They blame the drink and that, but maybe just there was just I think once Lars and James put their mind to something, there's nobody turning it. You know what I mean? Whatever they make their mind up, that's happening. Whether you like it or
And
not.
they're the bass player situation. Metallica have held their lineup together better than any of those bands.
Yeah, yeah. Like in fairness, like Jesus, the whole story about like how Cliff and the way they did the rock paper scissors for the bunk and all. You know that
Yeah,
story? Like this,
yeah,
like talk about trauma, and then to go back into the studio and for me release Justice, which I think is the best Metallica album. I know there's a lot of shit with the production and all that, but I think it's absolutely brilliant, that album. I think
yeah. I was always pumped for Ride the Lightning just because it was my entry level album.
okay.
But I think they've released Bar the Loathe, Era, and Saint Anger, which those three albums, well, there's songs here and there, but I'd never listen to them all the way through.
Okay, yeah,
I
yeah.
thought
Yeah,
I
man.
thought Hard Word was really great, and there were some excellent tracks on that. I thought 72 Seasons said, "Here's a band at least trying new things."
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
You know,
I
there's
was
one track that sounds like Alice in Chains, and one track just sounds like Black Sabbath, but it still all sounds like Metallica.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The production too, it's kind of maybe a little bit overproduced, some of it. And the drums just, I don't know. Something about that album. I do love it. They played, I went to Madrid to see them last year. And they played Inamorata, the big interlude one,
Yeah,
like 12 minutes long or something. That was kind of cool to see. Hardwire, yeah, I'd say probably being stubborn old boy that just was like, no, it's not like the old stuff. But it grew on me. It did grow on me. Saint
yeah. I
Anger,
think the
yeah.
thing is as well is these guys are in the 60s now.
They don't have to do
Whether
it.
they can physically play at that tempo anymore, I don't imagine Lars Ulrich is practicing drums every day.
I reckon he is now because he looks to be in the shape of his life, and I have to say, especially even Luke, who is a drummer, he was like zoned in on Lars last year, and it was only a couple of weeks before that he was getting a lot of shit from I think it was Download that it looked he probably was off timing a little bit, but I believe it was the speakers as well. There was one of the
Yeah,
speakers or something that made it look absolutely horrendous. But he does look fit, and even Hetfield looks like. I know he got divorced from his wife and has a new girlfriend and maybe a new lease of life, but he looks happy.
he looks to be embracing being a rock star for the first time ever.
That's a good way of saying it.
Uh, he's wearing kind of clothes that are a little bit flashy, a bit of silver studs, and he does look happy. I think you've nailed it there. But I think because of the underground background, he was the one that resisted rock stardom the most, where Kirk and Lars seem to have embraced it.
Yeah, yeah. He's definitely a shy recluse. I think
Yeah,
he plays the persona as maybe some of us do. When you're hiding something and putting the brave face on and drinking and drugging or whatever they were at back in the day, But he does admit in interviews that he was just shy, writing, doodling, sketching, painting, drawing, songwriting. Just him and his
I would
guitar.
say one thing that cannot be leveled at Metallica, and fair play to them, they always give value for money with their lineups. I mean, I know the repeat weekend was an expensive excursion for anyone who went on it, but no, two different sets with
Yeah,
completely different songs.
yeah, yeah.
There's not many bands that can pull that off.
Yeah, like I have to say, Madrid, like going by the prices in the fucking Tree Arena these days, like I got the 2 nights in Madrid for two 230 for the 2 nights,
That's not bad. Yeah,
and
it's the day in between though when you're hanging around spending on food and drink.
well,
That's where your
we got
savings.
we got very lucky that we got into a kind of a Q and A with Kirk Hammett and Rob
Oh,
and
that's great.
Ross Halfin, the photographer.
Yeah,
And Ross had a new book out called The Black Album. It was like a black and white pictures of when they were recording the Black Album. So like it's just them on it was a small, little theater in Madrid, and they have the pictures going up behind them, and they're going through the photos and Kirk's talking about the photos and what were we doing then, and oh, I remember this, and they're on the plane, and it was funny. Ross talk about Hetfield not wanting to be a star. The time of the Black album, things were starting to go good. The Gravy Train was good, and they had their own plane. But they had the snake, the spiral snake that's on the
Yeah.
back. They had it on the plane. And Halfin said, all right, lads, line up in front of the plane there now. We're going to take a picture. Hetfield, no, not doing it. And it was, what do you mean you're not doing it? No, fuck that. He says, no. We look like posers. Like, no. But it was just, getting that human factor of hearing stories. Like, they're just like, some of us maybe put them up on this pedestal that they're gods or they're this and it. They're just lads.
Yeah, and he's probably the most normal out of all of them. I mean,
Yeah.
I know there's a documentary coming out strictly based on their fans' experiences with them.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be an interesting. And I think, again, there's not many bands that can pull that off. Here's 2 hours of our fans talking about why they love us.
Yeah. Some of the stuff kind of bugs me a little bit where it's kind of like, I hope you're doing this for the right reasons,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think money is even an issue for them anymore.
What do you reckon?
They've headlined every festival in the world. They've played on every continent.
Yeah. And
you kind of get to the stage, what have I got to prove? Nothing.
They've nothing. And that's the thing too. I think that's why the pressure's off. And it's like, you know what? We don't need to prove anything. We've sold the records. We have the fan base. We have the money. They're just out having fun. I think I can't imagine James Hetfield or Lars or any of them being happy sitting at home by the pool, even with their own family, because the life that they'd have or have had, the band is more the family than their own family.
Yeah, I mean, it's the longest relationship either James Hetfield or Lars Ulrich has had as each other.
Yeah.
And,
it must be hard to put that aside and just like live a normal life. It must be tough, like.
Well, a band I hate with a vengeance is Kiss.
Oh, thank you. I hit them to the muck.
But I really admire the fact that they said, right, let's just knock this on the head while we're at the top. Yeah, and they did their endless world tour and finished in New York. And I think for any band, you have to get to that stage. I mean, I was watching the news about The who I'd be a great fan of, sacking Zak Starkey. And I just think, well, Pete Townsend has to sit down now. Roger Daltrey can't hear. Look, just call it, lads.
Yeah, I seen something recently. Wasn't he giving out about the drummer or something?
Yeah, he said, I can't sing, I can't hear.
Yeah.
The guy's already playing electronic drums, so blame your monitor, man.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
maybe the Stones should knock it on the head, although I thought Hackney Diamonds was the best thing they've done since the 70s.
Yeah, I'm similar. I couldn't.
I mean, I think I'm going to the Black Sabbath thing in Birmingham.
I know, I'm so jealous.
And I don't know whether it's going to be a road crash or not. But the fact that Ozzy can't stand up is very worrying to me. I'm just kind of going, look, call him, man.
Yeah. And I think I said this to you, and I've read it somewhere where, like, Ozzy was kind of not quoted, but it was like meant to be spoken of. Like, he's like, you're going to do this when I die. So, you know what? I want to be here for it. Where that's half here for it, or if I'm sitting in a chair, I don't care. I want to be here for it because I know you're going to do it when I die.
I mean, I'm starting to hear a couple of little bits and pieces saying like everyone's going to do 3 or 4 songs, and one of them's going to be a Black Sabbath cover.
Yeah,
Slayer kind of let it out of the bag that they're rehearsing a Black Sabbath cover.
Yeah. I think the only band that's getting a kind of a set is Metallica.
Yeah.
And then the rest of them are kind of making like mini super groups and
maybe if it is whatever it is, to see all of those bands in one day is a once in a lifetime.
I'm so jealous.
If we're talking about metal, the 2 most metal gigs I was ever at before that was I went to see Slayer's farewell tour, allegedly farewell, with Lamb of God, Anthrax, and Obituary.
Shit.
I thought and I was living in England at the time. I went to the Big Four show at Nebworth.
Yeah.
So that was Metallica, Slayer,
Anthrax.
Megadeth, Anthrax, and Diamond Head. And they brought Brian Tatler on, and everyone played Am I Evil together.
Ah, daily, yeah.
And I just remember thinking, this is the most heavy metal moment that'll ever exist.
Yeah.
8 guitars playing the riff. And again, tying back into Slane, Nebworth to me is a great comparison. Same sort of venue,
Yeah.
really well organized. They would the nearest train station's about 40 minutes from it, but they ran free buses from the train station onto the site and then back that night.
Okay.
And they included that in the ticket price. So you're already paid for your bus. It's flat, but it's a stately home, exactly like
Then.
Slane. But it's so much easier to get out of, probably because it's flat and there's public transport. And,
Yeah, it's better set up.
I just remember going to it for the first time for Sonnets Fair and comparing it to Slane and going, this is a real difference here. Again, the weather can affect how it really goes, but they also, because it's flat, they put a stage at each end. So when one band is taken off, you just turn around and there's a band on the other side.
No way, right? Cool.
And so the music would run non-stop from 12 o'clock till the headline band finished.
Jeez.
And then they would also have a blue tent with other bands playing in it. Like we tried to get in to see Killing Joke and you couldn't even get near the tent.
Jeez.
So I said, you're going to kill me for this because Metallica were supposed to be on at the same time. I said, okay, let's go back and watch Metallica then.
Yeah.
But I'd never seen Killing Joke and I'd seen Metallica.
Yeah. Oh, you have to do what you have to do. Yeah. But I love them festivals. Yeah, I love. I
always think if they'd done something like that in Dublin, say in the RDS or something, that would work with 2 stages.
Do you remember they done the kind of, they called it download in, what was it, 03 or 06 or something in RDS? Was there 2 stages? Was there 2 stages?
I wasn't at that one. I do remember going to the Sunstroke Festival, which was up near Phibsborough somewhere. There was 1 stage, but it was really eclectic. So Chili Peppers headlines.
Really, yeah.
Fate No More the year before, but it was like Therapy, Sonic Youth. It's the first time I'd ever seen hip hop. Ice Cube was on it 1 year.
Right.
But then they moved it to the Tree Arena. And because I was young and stupid, I dug my heels that I'm not going. And that was my one chance to see White Zombie and Soundgarden. I didn't go.
Chris.
And I kind of regret it to this. That's my biggest regret, being, real militant. Well, I'm not going if it's indoors because that.
Yeah.
The folly of you.
Yeah. I would have loved to. I got to see Chris Cornell a couple of times. I seen him with Audio Slave twice. I really enjoyed Audio Slave. I know it's a type of a super group. I thought they were brilliant. I know there's only 2 or 3 albums. I thought they had some great stuff.
I thought the first single was their Paranoid. I still think it's a rock anthem. Coochie was that what it was called?
Yeah, Coochie.
Yeah, I think a brilliant song. And I think Chris Cornell was the greatest singer of our generation.
I agree. I caught him in New York. I've spoken about this so many times. I'm sorry if anybody heard this story before, but it was a very, very small venue in New York, just off Times Square. It was what was the name of the tour? The Songbook or the Song something, and it was just him on the guitar, acoustic guitar on stage. There was maybe 400 people there, 500 people. Everybody sitting. It was like a cinema, and everybody was just sitting, and he was just playing, and he just had everybody. Like, I know it was only 400 people, but he just had everybody. The palm of his hand. He was amazing. He was so.
Yeah, I still think Soundgarden are great. I kind of lost interest around the Black Hole Sun time. I just thought, this is like every time I put the TV on, it was on. I was like,
yeah, I find it hard. The first album, I struggled to. I enjoy it, but the way some people go on about it, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I didn't get.
I think all of those grunge bands started off pretty abrasive. I mean, there's a big difference between Bleach and Nevermind.
Yeah, the rawness. Yeah.
I'm not going to be a snob and say, Bleach is better. They're both great, but they're both very different.
Yeah. And then the last one is different as well, in Utro,
Yeah, and I think that kind of era of music, because I hate glam rock so much. Oh, God, I hate it. Like Motley Crue's My Dare of Hell,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, it's pure cheese.
and- which kind of contradicts me saying I'm really tolerant. If that's what you're into, that's fine,
Yeah,
but I don't want to listen to it.
yeah,
And when grunge happened, I celebrated. I was like, that's the end of that.
yeah, yeah.
And I actually seen Motley Crue at a festival, and to me, I don't know. I mean, people now are saying they're miming, but at the time, I just thought they haven't been in a rehearsal room together in years, and it shows.
It's just a cash grab.
Yeah, and they followed the Cult, who were brilliant that day.
Mm.
And that's another band. If Ian Ashbury's in the mood, they're going to be great. If he's not in the mood, but I still love the Cult, and I think they're one of those bands people kind of forget about when you talk about great rock and roll bands.
Yeah, good band. Yeah, definitely, definitely. That was a great chat. But before we wrap this one up, I'll just finish off on Slane. Is there any band that you would have loved to have seen at Slane that haven't yet played there?
Uh,
There's one
That's
obvious one that
really, really good question. I'm just saying, who could headline Slane? I mean, there's
I think
mean,
a lot of people say AC/DC, obviously.
AC/DC would be brilliant, but again, it would depend on the support. I think if you had Slane, you need at least 4 support bands.
I was just
Just
I was just going to say that to you. Something that you touched on there. I think what Slane should do is to get like 4 good bands and get a serious lineup. You know, like the big. I'm not saying the big 4, but get like 4 decent bands with a good following. I'm not saying superstars, but like a good festival, mini little day festival. It'd be brilliant.
I think if you had AC/DC, the special guest, someone like Alice Cooper, who I've seen a load of times, is always great fun.
Right? Yeah, yeah,
The theatrical side of it. So if you had AC/DC, Alice Cooper, and then you could just fill in the gaps then for the other bands.
yeah,
Now Alice Cooper and Judas Priest on paper doesn't make much sense, but I bet you that tour's going to sell out in the States.
yeah, yeah. But like even people said about Metallica when it was announced, was saying they're like, oh, they'll never sell that out, and they're like, well, they did pretty
Yeah,
much.
AC/DC would be the obvious one. I mean, I was lucky enough to come by a ticket cheap at the last one because I wasn't going to go, and I had a really good seat. And they were super loud,
In Crow Park.
and the set list was great.
Yeah, yeah,
And the
yeah,
atmosphere was electric,
yeah.
and that sometimes can happen like that. I remember I was living in the UK, and Status Quo were on their second reunion tour with the original 4. And my friend got me a ticket, and I really dragged my heels.
Right.
But when I went to that gig, the atmosphere was astounding. The only fans I've ever seen so fanatical are Slayer fans. Like there was women and men with Status Quo tattoos on their arms,
Yeah, yeah.
and they were loud, and they went for it. And I was in the balcony, the Hammersmith Odeon, and I thought I was going to
Right.
die because the thing was vibrating.
No way. Yeah, my boss is
Uh,
a massive Cove fan. He raves about them all the time. Yeah, he loves them. He loves them. But
Again, there's another band that Francis Rossi should have called. As soon as Rick Parfitt died, he should have went right dumb.
yeah, yeah,
And, I really appreciate Mickey D and Phil Campbell going, there's no way. There's no Motorhead without Lemmy. Forget it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's some of these bands kind of, even Alice in Chains like comes to mind. Like, okay, they've released a couple of records, but
No one cares.
no one cares.
And I think any band, this includes Metallica, once you get beyond 10 years, no one wants to hear your new album. They just play the classics.
Yeah, it's
But,
hard.
that can be slip into a very dangerous area as well, because I love Anthrax and I've seen them for years and years and years. Same bloody set list. I can tell you what song's coming next.
Yeah, yeah. People,
Um,
but they know what people want to hear,
yeah,
and they know how
but
to
I
keep
think you
people.
have to kind of take whatever band you are. You have to take your hardcore fans on and throw some deep album tracks. I'd love to hear Anthrax playing Medusa.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, or for instance, or Metallica playing Trapped Under Ice or something. Just throw
Fandom.
me the odd curveball.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a couple of curveballs in Madrid. What did they play? Well, they played Orion, which I think is common enough on the set now, and then they played What did they play that was random? I think they played the thing that should not be off the Puppets album. Which
Yeah, see that to me, the rhythm guitar and that is just like a razor. It's great.
yeah.
I think Metallica's problem is they only have a handful of albums if you compare them to other people who
Mm.
are pumping out albums. Like I think I read Megadeth, it's like their 15th album or something. I'm going,
Yeah, but the
really? Is there 15 albums of Megadeth?
last 10 were probably shite, like probably.
Yeah. But it's just when you have that luxury of taking your time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Q Prime, from a financial point, are a great management.
Mm.
From actually looking after the artists, they're rubbish. Like they had ACDC and they get onto ACDC on the flight back from Bon Scott's funeral. Who's going to be the new lead singer?
Yeah.
And I feel it's the same thing when Cliff Burton died.
Yeah.
This is Q Prime saying, and even if you see some kind of monster, Jason Newsted left the band. They're coming in handing out their schedule for the next year, and he said, and Lars goes, "Did you not? He left the band. Are you not listening?"
Yeah.
So
That's
you have that mix of commercialism. How much money can we make out of this?
the suit.
And
Yeah.
they might not be ripping them off, but I don't think management really cares about any band. It's just like keep the gravy train rolling.
Yeah.
And a band I can take or leave would be Iron Maiden, but I would say their manager is the exception. Rod Smallwood travels everywhere with them.
Yeah.
He's as famous as the band, and there's not many. If you put Q Prime stand in front of me, I couldn't pick them out of a lineup.
Yeah. Well, what do you call your man with the beard? What do you call him? I can't think of his name now.
Yeah, see, he's just some background, but Rod Smallwood is as big as the band.
Yeah. No doubt.
And I mean, I'm sure that gig in Malahide Castle, if the weather is good, is going to be a phenomenal day for people.
Yeah, I caught them in Belfast 2 or 3 years ago. Out your field up, out your road. I don't know what. Ormo Park. It was decent. Like he can still sing. In fairness to him, he can still.
Yeah, I
sing.
mean, I like them more as people.
Yeah.
As I think they're decent people rather than and the songs here and there. But again, it's another band I would never say, "Oh, you know what? I might put on an Iron Maiden album."
Jesus, Number the Beast, I really enjoy. I have to say, I think it's really good.
Ferris Slave would probably be the only one I'd pull out and go, right, let's have a whack at this.
I think it was one of my first introductions to heavy metal was Number the Beast. I remember my neighbour giving it to me, and I was like 6 or 7, and it just stuck with me from that. It's like, what?
That constitutes child abuse, does it?
I always remember "Hallowed Be Thy Name." I'm like, what is this?
I tell you, Ride the Lightning was handed to me on a blank tape, Tipex, and I just said Metallica Ride the Lightning. No track was some 6'2" punk. I can't even remember the guy's name, and I wish I could because I'd kiss his feet and thank him.
Yeah.
And I just went home and put it on, and you get your little intro for 5 Fire Fire, and then.
Yeah.
And I always say it was like The Wizard of Oz. It was like stepping out your front door from black and white into colour.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
When you hear people saying, "Oh, heavy metal's a phase," or you can't go from listening to Metallica and Slayer or Maiden, Black Sabbath, and suddenly say, "Oh, you know what? I think I'm going to go through an Ed Sheeran phase." It doesn't really happen.
No, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen at all. But Bobo, that was a great chat. We went in.
Thank you so much.
We went in 100 different directions, but it was brilliant. It was very natural.
I'm sure you can edit it down to something.
Oh man, it was great. Sometimes you're better off just letting it go where it goes, and that's so many people say it to me on this podcast, and they're listening, driving in their car, or they're out walking, or they're doing this, and they're like, it feels like I'm in a bar and I'm just kind of listening to somebody's conversation. And I'm like, look, if that's what you get out of it.
Perfect job then.
Yeah. So, look, we'll leave it at that for there. And maybe we'll have you on again for another chat, Bobo. But thanks very much, all right?
Thanks for having me. And anytime, it'll be a pleasure.
No bother. And remember, keep rocking.
Always.